Hello all and welcome to the TFF podcast by Fantasy Football Hub, our 5th episode of the 2021 season as we talk all things Telegraph fantasy football. My name is Fergie and I'm joined as usual by two superb Telegraph fantasy managers. Firstly, Luke Wilson. How's it going with you, Luke?
Yeah, good, thanks. Moved up considerably. Most of my transfers have paid off, and so yeah, moved up ranks quite nicely. As we were just discussing, bar one move where I forgot the stupid deadline rule and missed out on Lingard's 10 points, which is a bit frustrating. But bar that, no, very good.
That's massive. A 10 points at your rank now is worth about probably 40-50 places as well, isn't it? So yeah, that must be
Yes,
very,
it is. Yes, I calculated that. It's 39 places it would have been, but hey.
and jumping above me in the rankings, is that right as well, or close?
No,
really
6
close?
points behind you.
6 behind you.
Yeah.
We also have the Hub's resident statistician, Carl Weeks. Welcome, Carl. How is life treating you at the moment?
Hello. Yeah. Yes. So same as Luke. Not treating me too bad considering everything what's happening around the world. I've moved up since last time we spoke. I was a bit higher. I was around your height, but I've fallen away over the last couple of weeks. But I'm sure we'll get into that as we go along in the pod.
We will take a look at our teams in a minute. At this point, I'm going to apologise for not being able to fit in a pod. I think our last one was early in January. I listened back to it this morning, actually, just to kind of see where we finished off, and it was
January 2019, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, it's just, with all the football that's been on, it's just been absolutely nuts, and it's been really, really difficult to just find a spot, you know, to kind of dedicate to it. So, but we are here, and you know, we will look back now at that period, and we will also look back for the rest of the season. For our YouTube watchers, if you haven't subscribed just yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner of the screen so you don't miss anything. Also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. So for this podcast, we'll take a look at our teams and our progress, which has been significant, actually. So for those who watched our last one, we left a message at the end. It was basically jump on Man City. And, you know, we just had a quick chat before, and then it seems that for those who did jump on Man City at that time, they should have seen their rank fly through the roof. But for those who didn't, maybe not as much. But we will have a look at our teams and progress now. We will have a look at what Carl's data is telling us from the last period and pull out the headlines there, followed by trying to work out what our next moves are and our plans for the remainder of the season. Bit of a giveaway. I am very, very low on transfers, almost to the point that I haven't got any moves left, but we will do our best to try and give everyone as much advice as we can for their teams for the rest of the season. We will answer some Twitter questions, some WhatsApp questions and email questions. We've had loads of questions in. Thanks so much as usual, everyone, for that. We'll share our plans for the run-in and finally take a look at the top of the Fantasy Football Hub members' £200 prize mini league. So firstly, gents, Man City. So I had a quick look back at the ownership levels of the Man City defence, which we all mentioned in the last podcast. And Ruben Dias, back at that time, was owned by under 5% of the game. John Stones was owned by under 2%. And Cancelo was owned by under 3%. We'll take a look at ownership later, but my goodness, I'm assuming you guys jumped on the City defence as well ahead of their run. Luke, is that what you did?
Yeah, I had 8. I was just working it out. I think I had 8 City players at one point. I just got rid of 2, but I've still got 5. So.
Wow, it was the time to do it. And how about you, Carl? Did you kind of jump on loads at that time as well, back in January?
Yeah, I sort of jumped back and on them. I think I only went up to 5, so I didn't quite get to your levels. And Gunderland, or whatever he's sort of called, yeah. I didn't jump on him, and I think that sort of like cost me quite dear. Well, he banged in a few goals, and I know he's very hot, and I've got him in some other fantasy football. But I had a feeling he may have just been going through a hot streak.
Yeah.
So I kept off, trying to be a little bit differential.
Yeah.
And you take your medicine, you take your chance. Sometimes you if you dodge a bullet, and sometimes you get shot through the heart. So
He's been well. What a player,
Yeah,
you know.
I know.
For those, you know, who listen to our Sky pods and FPL pods, been kind of ranting about Gundogan. What a footballer, you know, and you know, he's obviously done the business in TFF as well. With that, Carl, let's actually have a look at your team. So for our podcast listeners, can you run through your current team and just give us a bit of an overview on where you are?
Sure. Like I sort of said, I did have 5 City players up until recently.
Yeah.
And I made quite a few changes the last weekend when it's the cup game. So my team's going to look a lot different than either of your two.
Yeah.
So in goal, I got Mendes of Aston Villa. And then I got Bednarak, Southampton defender. And then I've got Rudiger and Aspilicueta in defence from Chelsea. And Maguire and Wan-Bissaka of Man United. In midfield, I've still got Bruno, Son, Foden, and Mount, and up front, I've got DCL.
So 5-4-1. Interestingly,
5-4-1, and it's much more. I've probably because, we may get into this a little bit later. I kept with 5 at the back more because I need to catch up.
Okay.
And therefore, you try to play a bit more high variance and jumping on Chelsea and jumping on Man United players. I was trying to take a gamble a bit early, and it didn't quite work out as I was expecting. But I've still got 4 transfers left, and I've still got 1 last throw of the dice. So you never know.
Did you have Bednarak for his minus? Was it -7 or -9?
-12.
-12.
I can't remember. It was even. I think it's -12 because I did.
Yeah, it was.
So you know, some of it's luck and good luck and bad luck, and sometimes you have both. So I got rid of Bednarak at the end of last time we met, and then there was an injury, and because Southampton were playing some non-league, like Shrewsbury, someone like that in the cup. So to get rid of my injury and get an extra game, he come in and he about 2 clean sheets in a row, and I thought, I've been quite lucky here. You know, because I'd never brought him back in, and then he gets an own goal, concedes 9 goals and sent off.
That's the worst. It was confirmed as the worst ever TFF score in a single game. Incredible.
Yeah, and then they got another hammer in recently, and it's like, well, he will go, but because of the cup, and secondly, they've got at least a few decent fixtures.
They have.
He's a few more weeks, shall we say?
I think he's okay for a while. I was looking at the fixtures earlier, and his next 4 or 5 games, they're actually really, really good. But like I say, we'll touch those later. And what's your overall rank at the moment, Carl?
It's 802.
Okay.
So.
And you were around 5,000 in January, was that right?
No, last time I was about 1,900. I was 1,936.
Okay.
But I think I've probably used a few more transfers. Well, definitely a lot more than what Luke had, and I think probably more than yourself. I did move all the way up to about 300 at one stage.
I saw you there.
And I thought, you know, I pulled even accounting for transfers, I pulled quite a distance ahead, and then it just started. Like I said, I didn't have Gundogan, and every time he'd shoot, it's like he scores. Oh my God, my heart sinks, and the gap gets narrower and narrower. And now you're in the distance, and it's like, oh well. But at least you've got. Well, I say, you know, obviously I wish you both as much the best you can, but I still have slim hopes of trying to catch either of you.
Well, if you know a position, you know, in the top 1,000 any season, Carl, is good going. You know, just because we're doing all right, I think, you know, well, if you think back, I was looking back to our other podcasts, and I was like 70,000 back in October, and I think in November we didn't we, in the international break, and I was about 40,000 then. You know, it was really, really tough going. And you know, I think to get a top 1,000 finish this season is very good going, because it's been a tough, especially that first half of the season where there was no clean sheets. You know, and normally all the data tells us to invest at the back, doesn't it? it just wasn't happening. Liverpool conceding 7 against Villa, and United conceding 6, and all this kind of stuff. So I think
you're right. It's been a very difficult season, and there's so many things as well that's happened in the year or in the season, which are very particular to this season as well, in terms of the two Manchester clubs not playing in the week 1, and also the way the rearranged fixtures have come in. So like when we went in big on Man City.
Yeah, that's right.
I think for me, not only are they the best team and those hitting form, but also with all their games being brought forward, and therefore they're having all the games.
Yeah, of course.
Normally they get shoved to the end of the season, but I don't really. I always set myself like little goals in all the various formats. So the overall rank's not my main aim.
Yeah,
it's like, well, it is to start with. Getting to the top 100. That's a realistic goal at the beginning of the season. Maybe the top 500, but not overly bothered about that. It's normally quite often mini leagues, and
of course.
Can I chance it? So I will take gambles now, just trying to hit some money in the mini leagues rather than about I got 250th instead of 350th. It's like I'm not overly concerned about that.
Cool. Okay. Luke, let's have a look at your team. Are you able to read it out for our podcast listeners and give us your thoughts?
Yeah. So I've got. Hang on. Oh, I'm looking at your team here. Hang on. I've got to go back a slide, I think. Sorry, mate. But Luke's team says it's a blank slide. That's my problem.
Of course, because you sent it in late. That's why. I'm
being tardy. Yeah. Right. Let me get it off my phone. Right. So I was thinking, I don't have Mendy in goal. So I've got Edison, Diaz, Cancelo, Stones, Shock. I've got Wan-Bissaka and Azpilicueta, who I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but Teamgate. I got 3 points for him, but I saw he was in the starting team. Mega bonus. Oh no. Just as it kicks off, they change the flipping team. Anyway, then I've got Bruno, who's going nowhere, KDB, Rafinha, another classic of that day. I brought in Lingard, I deliberately waited to see the team sheets because that's what you do in Telegraph, and then realised, I was like looking at my team later on going, why haven't I got his 10 points? And then realised that, you need the 2-hour rule again.
Nightmare.
It's just 3 kids and looking after the kids, and so alarms and everything set for all the deadlines, and I still mess it up.
So
mate,
it's very easy.
You people without kids, you've got a big advantage on us. And then I've got Kane up front, but I did take out Bamford for Aspi, so I did have Bamford very recently, so I got his points as well. So I've got 8 transfers left. I thought it was 7, but that was because I was looking at what value I had. But so I've actually got 8 transfers left and 900k in the bank, which is quite good. And I'm at bang on 280 at the moment. So on my aim, as ever, is always top 100. Haven't done it for a while, so I think with that many transfers, I'm interested to see what the average transfer count is, because I don't know what it is. But yeah, I've got I don't think I'm a million miles off, because I think you're 16 points ahead, and I think you're sort of 175 or something like that, aren't you? So it's not that many points, and I work on a transfer being 10 points. So yeah, hopefully you'll tell me the average transfer count's like 2 or 3, and I'll be like, happy days.
No,
we'll see.
So I've got the average transfer count from a few weeks ago. We haven't had the updated one yet. We tend to get it roughly once a month, but I'll bring it up in a bit. I'm got on these slides. I'm gonna have to look back into one of my last articles, but I will do that. But Rafinha has been a really nice pick for you, Luke. I kept avoiding him, but he's 2.9 million, is he roughly around that? Yeah,
he's dirt cheap,
and he's done really well, haven't he? And he's actually been really unlucky as well. He should have had a lot more than than the odd goal and the odd assist. He's played really well, haven't he? So
Yeah, I can't remember what game it was where I think Leeds lost. They either drew 0-0 or they lost to 0, and he created 5 big
Oh,
chances that
and
nobody
Cooper headed
scored.
4 keeper. Sorry,
Yeah,
Cooper headed 4 easy chances either wide or at the keeper, didn't he? Yeah, I remember that game. Yeah.
But, yeah.
No, it's a nice team. 5-4-1 as well, and you've started a transition to Chelsea by the look of it as well. I'm
Yeah,
sure there'll
so
be a
Wan-Bissaka will be going.
yeah.
I think I've
Okay.
just got to work. I mean, it pains me, but like I might just ship him to another Chelsea defender or Mount or someone like that. In fact, no, it can't be Mount because can't play 4-5-1. Come on, Telegraph, fix that. Yeah, so he may move on, but
You can play 4-5-1. You
can you?
Yeah, you can't play 5-3-2.
5-3-2. Oh, right, okay. That's Sky. I'm getting mixed up in my games, aren't I?
Yeah.
But yeah, so he might go to Mount, but it'll be team sheet dependent. But got West Brom next game, haven't they? So they've got a pretty good run, and they're in the cup. So yeah, Wan-Bissaka will be leaving at some point. But
I'm gonna throw in an argument for you later to keep Wan-Bissaka and chuck away one of your City defenders, but we'll come to that when we get to the fixtures anyway. But yeah,
going to take a lot of convincing.
But again, really good season, Luke. Especially if we consider again where we were, kind of at Christmas time and stuff.
I think the last pod I was in last out of us 3. I think I was 7K or something. So
7K, and it's only, what is it, 2.5 months, 9 or 10 weeks, and you're up in 280th. That's really, really good going. So yeah, as you said,
pretty much John Stones did it on his own.
John Stones, what a legend! Like unbelievable. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And finally onto my team. So I've still got a sea of sky blue on my team. I have got Mendy in goals, but I brought him in. We may as well touch on it now. So for those who didn't see it on the weekend, Chelsea released their lineup for their FA Cup game at Sunday lunchtime at home to Sheffield United, and basically they released the wrong teams. So they had out a really strong 11. They had Mendy and Azpilicueta, and Havertz and all these players, and so myself and a lot of other TFF managers made transfers off the back of that. So I brought in Mendy and Azpilicueta, as was always my plan, to move on to those players. And they then re-released a team sheet about 20 minutes later with a very, very different looking team. And there were only 3 remaining players, which were Mason Mount, I want to say, was it Rudiger? Maybe Rudiger, and just one other player. The other 8 were different, which caused, well, angry was an understatement, because obviously in TFF you can't reverse your transfers, and I mean, it's not the end of the world, because they play next, don't they? They're home to West Brom straight after, the turnaround. So it's not the end of the world.
Got a good run of fixtures as well, and they're really in the cup. Yeah.
But yeah, so that would have been Edison. I've had Edison in kind of all the way through. But it's Mendy now. My back 5 at the moment. So I've still got Diaz, Cancelo, Stones, and Zinchenko, and I've got Azpilicueta, who I brought in for Bamford on Sunday. I've got midfielder Foden, Gundogan, Sterling, and Bruno, and I've got Kane up front of his own. So I've recently moved from a 4-4-2 to this 5-4-1. I have only got 2 transfers left in this team. However, I would say I have got another team which is the same as this, which I think has got, it's either 5 or 6 left. So I'm ranked roughly about 175th at the moment, which I'm really, really pleased with. It's all context, right? In terms of being 70k, being 5.5k at the start of January, and hoping to be able to break into top 1 or 2k, to be able to be in the top 200 at this point is just, it's just amazing. And I know, I'm the same as you guys, right? So, at the start of the season, top 100 is always the aim. I'm probably not going to be able to hang on to top 100 with only the 2 transfers left. But, a top 500 finish, potentially, from where I was, I would be absolutely over the moon with, because I really feared at the start of the season I was going to be, 5 or 10,000. So, and kind of mini league wise and wherever else, really pleased. I think I think the FA Cup has obviously got a big say, because if Man City can get Chelsea, if Man City can beat Chelsea, not only does it obviously knock out Chelsea, so Chelsea won't have that extra game in terms of the final, but a lot of these Man City players will have that extra game as well then. So I think that is probably pivotal for me in terms of, whether I get a finish in the top 200 or 300 or end up fall all the way back to 600 or 700.
You need to stick some money on Chelsea winning that FA Cup game,
I do,
just in
right,
case,
exactly.
just to balance your losses on that. Stick £100 on that or something.
Exactly.
I know you're in for a lot of money on the mini leagues at the moment, so
I am. So my kind of current thinking, we'll touch on our teams again at the end, but Sterling for me is a placeholder, probably for Salah maybe. We'll touch on kind of our next moves in a bit, but Liverpool's fixtures look really, really good. Sterling is probably overpriced, but I think just something to touch on in terms of Man City, because obviously they have been the centre of everything for the last 2.5 months or so, right? Everyone who's jumped on them have just been absolutely flying, but they've only got 8 league games left. They've got potentially a maximum of 2 FA Cup games, and there's been a lot of chat around how many of these players will actually play an amount of those games. So, if you think of Diaz, for example, he tends to play nearly every game, right? So you can assume out of those 9 or 10 games left, Diaz will probably play 7, 8 or 9, whereas players like Stones, and this will be my argument, Luke, when you're kind of looking at taking out players, Stones is basically playing every other game, right? So Stones potentially could only have left in him for the season, in terms of this format of the game now, maybe 4 or 5 games, whereas you look at teams like Villa and Everton. So Villa and Everton have got 10 league games left still. Leicester, have got 8 or 9 plus some FA Cup games. Southampton have got some nice looking fixtures, and players like maybe Ings, Che Adams, Bednarek even. In Leicester you've got Vardy, Iheanacho, Harvey Barnes when he's back in a couple of weeks. They're gonna probably have twice as many games as John Stones. They're just gonna because I do think it's important in terms of this. But I think that's kind of one thing to look at. I think the team moving forward, we've all mentioned Chelsea, the team, both in terms of form and their fixture run for the next few games, is absolutely beautiful. Their next few games, they've got West Brom, Crystal Palace, Brighton, West Ham and Fulham in the league. They have got Man City twice, once in the league and once in the FA Cup, but they've got a lovely run coming up, and just a couple of other notes. I think that it's been quite difficult to plan ahead, because we're only getting 2 weeks of fixtures at any one time, and looking at those 4-for-1s and things, it's been quite hard. We don't know anything at the moment past the 16th of April. And just my last kind of observation, I suppose, at this point is the Telegraph, for those who haven't seen it, have started to publish average transfers remaining, which has been absolutely fantastic, because they've been a lot lower than we expected. It actually encouraged me to kind of use a few more. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think at the time they started to publish them, I think they were saying 10 or 11 left, and I had 18 left at that point, and things. So it actually encourages you to attack maybe a little bit more. I'll get the average ones up now in a second, but sorry for prattling on, gents. What are your thoughts, firstly, Luke, on that? In terms of what I said about the City boys maybe only having 4 or 5 games left in them.
What I was thinking, I was debating whether to interrupt you, but I am a betting man. Do I think let's say Stones gets 6 games, right? Because he's their first choice defender, so he's going to play the semi-final, he's going to play the cup, so there's 2 and then half the rest, right? So he's going to get 6 games. 6 games of John Stones or 9 games of Bednarek. Well, Stones will get 4 clean sheets, Bednarek will be lucky to get 2. So yeah, I'll take him. Who's got a better goal threat? Stones. Yeah, I fair enough. I mean, I can see it maybe with if if they go out of the cup, then I'm off them, and I'll be going on probably less. I think Leicester will beat Saints, and I think, so it'll be either Leicester or Chelsea I'll jump on. But all my transfers now are going to be really focused. I might have one or two luxury ones, but they're all going to be focused on who's getting to the final. So I think it's going to be City and Leicester players. So I hope City get there, because then that means I can bring in all the Leicester boys, and there's a lot of value in that team actually, which I'm sure we'll come on to later. But so I think I'll be influenced by that. I think there's a couple of other teams that are a bit left field, but Liverpool have to get Champions League, right? So I might look at them. And Arsenal have got, I don't know when we'll get to the fixture ticker, but from memory, I think they've got the easiest run in. I can't remember that's defensively or offensively, but somebody like Tierney, from memory, is 3.2, could be great because he's fit again. And, from memory, I think they've got a run of, Liverpool, I think they've got Liverpool next, but Liverpool, that's a clean sheet all over, isn't it? These days, Liverpool terrible. Right. But I think then they've got Fulham and Sheffield United and Newcastle and I don't know who else, Brighton or someone like that in that run in, and so they could easily have a nice run of clean sheets. So I don't know. But in answer to your question, am I going to get rid of Stones? I don't think so.
Fair enough.
I think, I can't see it really.
That's fair enough. What about you, Carl? What do you think about, the whole holding on to Man City, or kind of moving them on, or what are your general thoughts?
Well, I think you can see by my team where my thoughts are.
You've moved them all on already.
I've moved them all on. And I thought that, I may have moved them on to the wrong people, but I think that was the right time to move them on if you are going to, in the sense that I think they've got two tricky matches coming up. It's playing Leicester, and then they've got Leeds, and then they've got the League Cup final, so they've got a blank, and there's all those sorts of issues. So a lot of it, I think, is situational, and what are your personal objectives? Because I think, I back Luke up in what he's sort of saying, and I've got a very similar viewpoint. Much better to have Man City players, but I think, generally, they'll have high ownership. So if you want to make progress and take a chance, if Man City don't perform, then that's a bonus to me because I've moved off. So in that sense, now I'm not quite sure it'd be useful when the fixtures come out, but some people sort of say the FA Cup, you may have the league fixture straight after it, like you did in the previous rounds, and therefore much more rotation. And both Man City and Chelsea, you expect to progress in the Champions League, and I think that will lead to more rotation. So I'm tending to look for another team to jump on. So Leicester is one that springs to mind just because of the cup. There could be an argument, to go completely wild and go for someone like Southampton. I think they have such a terrible run-in that they could lose a few more 9-0, and I don't fancy having three of their defenders. Leicester have got a very difficult last three matches, but I think they're like away to Chelsea and away to Man U, and they could both be in the European Cup finals or semi-finals, and therefore, Leicester will still be pushing hard, and therefore, I can see them still getting a result. So it'd be someone like Leicester to gamble on, unless I can find out another team.
And I mean, just to, I guess, a shameless plug for one of my articles from a couple of seasons ago or last season, but this is the period, like as of this game week, is the period where all the big teams start keeping mega amounts of clean sheets, and those at the bottom of the league really just stop trying to score and start trying to stop conceding. So this is your time, in my opinion, to get off the attackers and get on the defenders. But I will not be going near any mid-table teams for clean sheets. To be honest, I wouldn't recommend anybody going for Newcastle or Fulham or anyone down the bottom either, really. So I think it's look at the top six, look at their defenders, who's playing, whose value. That from a defensive point of view, that's all I'm going to be looking at, I think.
Devil's advocate there, Luke. So you said so you said you're going to jump on Leicester. Leicester's last three fixtures, as Carl just alluded to, if I can find them. So they've got, do you know, I haven't got them in front.
United, Chelsea, Spurs.
Right, United, Chelsea, Spurs, and if they reach the FA Cup final, they will have either Man City or Chelsea. So you've just said
I'll give you. I can count
all the big teams. All the big teams are going to keep loads of clean sheets, but then you're going to buy a load of Leicester
What
players.
does Ollie do when he plays a top six team? He gets 0-0. Chelsea, what do they do these days? 1-0 or 0-0. Spurs, Mourinho, what does he do? 1-0. Right? They're not conceding more than one goal in any of those three games if you go Leicester.
You're backing up my entire point, is you're talking about jumping on Leicester attacking players who are not going to score many points or any points in any of those games.
No, I'm saying that I thought you were saying Leicester defenders, but Leicester attackers, I don't know. I mean, Jamie Vardy does very well against all the big teams. He always has done.
You can't. Hang on. You've just said they'll all be going 0-0.
No, I'm saying those teams because I thought your point was Leicester have got those hard games, and I was talking about which defenders.
Okay, all right. I'll give you that then.
I don't actually think any of those three games. If it was Liverpool or Man City, I'd give you that. But I don't really see them. I mean, they're not going to be high scoring, but if Leicester are in the FA Cup, we get 4 games, and they're a good team who can score against anyone can keep clean sheets against anyone. So but hey, I haven't got 2 transfers, mate. I've got 8, so I can get the run up until the Man United game, and then I'll jump on somebody else. Hang on, let me have a look. Yeah, that point, I'll jump on Liverpool defender or something. Not that I can afford it, but.
Touche. No, that's fair enough. I've lost track of the point we were going on to then. I have found the average transfers remaining.
That would be me.
No, that's all right. I have found the average transfers remaining. So this was from the 25th of February. So it is quite old. We will have some more after the international break. But as of the 25th of February, the top 10,000 average was 9.4. The top 5,000 average was 8.8. The top 1,000 average was 8.2. The top 100 average was 7, and the top 10 average was 5.3. Bear in mind, this was a month ago now, so those numbers will have dwindled more again. So anyone who hasn't seen these before, well, obviously make sure you sign up to Fantasy Football Hub. We release them all, and also if you go to Telegraph Fantasy Sports, they're released in there in my article roughly once a month as well, but it's very, very useful to know that.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, I mean, I think you can probably take from where the three of us are, and we've all season been above average.
Yes, definitely.
So, Carl, what you've got 6, yeah?
4.
You got 4. So he's got 4. You've got 2. I've got 8. So no, but there's 14. So we're on 7. We've always been considerably, sort of 25-30%
always
above.
Have been, yeah.
So I would estimate that most of those people, particularly in the high ranks, have probably only got 4 on average left.
I agree with that.
And it's a whole month, and there was a lot of games, a lot of FA Cups, lots of 3-for-1s, 4-for-1s. So I would be shocked if the top 2-3K had more than 4 on average.
I think it's worth mentioning as well, just specifically on my team and and Carl's as well. We've already used a lump of transfers now, very, very recently, to move to the teams which we want for the next few weeks. Even though I've only got 2 left, it's not like I'm planning on using those 2 very, very, very soon. I had 4. I used 2 on the weekend to get to the Chelsea players. So my team now is going to be as is now for weeks and weeks and weeks, and those remaining 2 are going to be kind of emergency transfers. I have got earmarked Sterling to Salah. Maybe we'll see if Liverpool improve, but in terms of my team, I'm fairly happy with it. I truly think as long as you've got Kane, Bruno, and Salah if he's playing well, I think they're three really, really high owned, talismanic, penalty taking players for three of the best teams. As long as you've got those, you can afford maybe to go for basically whoever you want in the other ones. But it's probably worth mentioning that. So let's move on then. So top point scorers. So Carl, thank you so much as usual for the mountains of work you do in terms of your data for us. So for our YouTube watchers, we've got a graphic at the moment showing the top point scorers by position. If I just call out the top ones very, very quickly, so this is over the whole season. Top of keepers, Ederson is top with 132 points. Martinez, what a defensive season Villa has had. I don't think any of us saw that coming at the start of the season. Martinez is second. Mendy is third. Schmeichel is fourth. Leno is fifth. In defence, Ruben Dias, top points scorer in defence with 140. João Cancelo second. Wan-Bissaka, quite surprisingly, I would personally say in third. Creswell, who's again had an amazing season. You called him out, Carl, didn't you, in January about him having about him and West Ham having a really good season. He's fourth, and John Stones there is fifth. So those three Man City defenders who were absolutely nowhere back in January have come to the fore, and they have scored an absolute mountain of points in the last 10 weeks. In midfield, top of the shop, Bruno Fernandes, 174 points. He just, continues to be just an amazing fantasy asset. Mo Salah in second, even though he's done absolutely nothing recently, he's still there in second. Heung-min Son in third on 163. Marcus Rashford, who again, Carl pointed out around Christmas time, I think, and I was quite bemused by that shout, Carl. I don't mind admitting, but what a shout he's been for you. And Gundogan has come from nowhere to come into look at Carl's face. He's sick. He's fifth. And then up front, Harry Kane, who is the top point scorer in the entire game, 183 points for Kane. Calvert-Lewin, second striker with 156. Bamford, third with 153. Jamie Vardy just keeps doing it. I hate Vardy as a fantasy player, because when you own him and you watch him, he doesn't do anything when you own him. When you don't own him, he always manages to do something. He's such a frustrating player. And Ollie Watkins, a 4.4 million is the fifth highest striker. So Watkins and Bamford in particular, what amazing value they've been all season. So Carl, what are your thoughts on this data?
Well, first of all, I'll shout out Luke, because I think he would have mentioned Cresswell.
Oh, it's Luke
in January.
I do apologise.
Yeah, I would have
Luke,
thought so.
Carl.
I don't remember. Take the credit, Carl. I don't remember that.
But when I look at this list, it shouts to me mainly that the cream rises to the top. You got the two Man City defenders. Cresswell being in there is the slight odd one, because the most expensive players tend to score the most points. The ones like Bamford and Watkins are on the cheaper end and have performed really well. But I don't think any players here come as that much of a surprise if you sort of like ask people who they expect to be the best midfielder, striker, or defenders. I think when we move to the next slide is when you get a bit more insight about value for money.
Yep.
Just one shout out. I want to for anybody who shared the same pain of me as bringing in Harvey Barnes when he was doing great, and then the first game he plays he gets crooked, and he was on. Because he's number 6, joint 6 with Sterling. He was such good value. The other one is Justin. I know he got injured months ago, but Justin's still top 10, and he hasn't played for 2 or 3 months. So, we're talking Leicester players, but, they've done very, very well. Very well. I'm sure they'll come out on the next slide, but those boys is worth shouting out. But, Harvey Barnes, Payne, anyone who wants to share in that, I'm here for you.
I'd also like to shout out, actually, Che Adams, 3.5 million. He has been absolutely sensational. So he has scored 110 points, which is more than so it's the same as Kevin De Bruyne, and it is more than Maddison, Foden, Grealish, Neto, Azpilicueta, Zuma, Andy Robertson, and most of the keepers as well. Che Adams at 3.5 million has been an absolute bargain, and I think he will continue to be a bargain for a few weeks yet. Obviously Ings is still out, so they've got some really nice fixtures. Che Adams, 3.5 million, legend. I tell you what is surprising me in terms of the top point. You won't believe this. Lacazette and Firmino, right, have scored more TFF points this season than Foden and Grealish and Zuma, which I find absolutely bananas, because it seems like they haven't done, especially Firmino, it seems like he hasn't done anything all season, but he's got more TFF points than Grealish, even like Mason Mount, Soucek, Reece James, Luke Shaw, absolutely mad. Just worth pointing them out. Carl, we go on to the next one. So this is points per million. So this is where we delve a bit more into the value. What are your kind of highlights here?
Well, if we read a few of them out, just so the people on the podcast could get a bit of flavour. Top of the keepers is Mesele of Leeds, 2.1 value cost.
Should have taken that bet, Fergie. Should have taken that bet.
I know.
And on the defenders, this is where you get like the cheaper ones that they rise to the top, because these are like the enablers. So you got Taggart of Aston Villa, Cresswell again, Loughton of Burnley, Justin of Leicester that we've mentioned.
Justin was on fire, wasn't he, before he got injured? He was absolutely on fire. He was amazing.
Yeah, and Bedenek of Southampton. A lot of these, to me, I think a lot of the players are underpriced, especially at the bigger clubs. And I was a bit surprised, I must admit, at the weekend when I was like looking for Chelsea and Man United defenders, how expensive they were when you consider that they were replacing Man City defenders.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I think personally that even reserve defenders should be priced close to the first teamers, because if they do break into the first team, they just become, in everybody's team. Yeah. Anyway, going to the midfielders, you've got a few of the names you mentioned before. You've got Shuznek of West Ham, Neto of Wolves, Gundogan, Foden, Rafinha of Leeds, all cheap, good players. And again, the strikers, the cheap ones that you mentioned, top is Bamford, Che Adams, Calvert-Lewin and Watkins. So this is the total points divided by the cost. There's also another metric. So there's other players that are missed out and I think should be here.
Yep.
But they're missing because of the number of games they played. In goal, you've got Fraser Foster of Southampton. I'm not sure if he's actually gained that place, but he hasn't played very many games. But if he is the first choice and you start the season again, he's scoring really well for his price at 3 million. And Sanchez of Brighton, who's played a lot more games, and he's not there because of the lack, because he didn't play at the beginning, but he's scoring at 1.64 per pound per game. And when you go through the defenders, you get Stones and Craig Dawson of West Ham. He's another one who's missed out several games. In midfield, you've got Lingard, Smith Rowe, two cheap players who are breaking into the team now, so they won't appear in the other charts. But once you take into their games into account, they should be up there. And the obvious one from the forwards side, looking at it from my spreadsheet, is Iheanacho of Leicester. Hasn't got many points, but he hasn't played many games. But obviously, the games he has scored, he's been on a bit of a run at the moment. So they can be riskier because they may not have played for a particular reason, because they're not really first teamers. But like people like Smith Rowe could just be breaking into the team and could be a good option if you're looking for somebody cheap going forward.
Definitely. Luke, what are your observations?
No, I mean, I think it's all been drawn out there. I mean, I always come back to the point. You've got to get the blend of value players and points. So, you know, I for strikers, because of the pricing, I'd always only have one. I've got Cal. I did have Bamford, and then brought in Kane because he had a 3-for-1 over someone. I can't remember who I brought him in for. And then I shipped Bamford to Asby for a 3-for-1. But those are the two that I like. But having Kane, if he scores a hat trick, you get the points for the hat trick. It doesn't really matter if somebody else has got good value. It's about getting the points when the players score the points. But I mean, I think the really interesting thing here is, I mean, I guess my tactic, and I think you boys were on board to a point. The top 5 points per million players are 5 bar one of the keepers, but are all defenders, all under 3 million or less. And it just shows you if you stuck with them. I mean, I mean, yes, there's the Man City boys have hit form, but if you were just picking 5 defenders and a cheap keeper, so Meslier, five sub 3 mils that are playing, and then just rotate the other guys, and so you don't, budget becomes a non-event. You just have all the major hitters up front. It didn't seem to work for me at the start of the season, but again, the data is kind of showing that is, if you want to be a bit more reserved on your transfers, just get on those cheap ones early on. Don't pick Lamptey like I did, though, I guess.
You were unlucky with Lamptey, to be fair. He was looking good, wasn't he?
He was looking great, but yeah, for those who don't recall, my bet was that Lamptey was going to score more points than Meslier. Don't think he's going to do that.
Matty Target is the one for me who stands up there. He's been absolutely unbelievable. He's got the highest points per million, 43.8. He's still, he's 2.6 million. Villa's still got 10 games left. Their fixtures aren't great for the rest of the season, but he's just been superb. Clean sheets, a lot of attacking intent as well. Creswell the same. At 3 million. They've both been amazing value all season, and Gundogan and Foden eventually. But I do think, and again we mentioned this last time, but we did think that the more expensive City attackers wouldn't be that good value, mainly because the second key contribution role has gone this season. So for those who didn't know, last year you had points for assisting the assistant. Now that has gone. It's massively reduced the output, of players like De Bruyne and Sterling and those. Whereas players like Foden and Gundogan, because they're not that expensive, Foden's 3.4, Gundogan is 3.9. You take it, an assist or a goal off them, most games, and we're laughing.
Foden's a really interesting one because he frustrates the hell. And I don't think I know anyone who loves Foden more than you.
He's been so unlucky recently. He's been absolutely amazing, but it hasn't translated into points, has it?
Oh, he drives me insane, mate. It drives me insane. You own him, and he does nothing, and then he gets dropped, and then he gets dropped, and then he gets dropped, and you transfer him out, and he's still dropped, and he comes on for 5 minutes and bangs in a brace and gets an assist. He frustrates me, I think, more for the Sky and FPL particularly. I just don't think I can own him in those formats until he nails a first team place, because he's not first team and he should be, but he's not. But because he plays the FA Cup games, I'm quite surprised to see him so high in the points again. But from my Man City boys, he was the first to go out of everybody.
Oh, really? I'm leaving him in because he's like, for me, he's so cheap. Obviously, if we could all play 6 or 7 at the back now, we probably would, wouldn't we? Right? But I just think he's so cheap, and he can score a goal or 2 in any game. Like, what did he get? Like 3 assists, didn't he? In a week or so ago, I'm sure he had three KCs. He can just do that at any time. So for me, I can say, just worth leaving in. But he's been unlucky because he's had so many shots and great saves and hit the woodwork and whatever else. But he's not going anywhere.
I think his biggest biggest level of being unlucky is because Sterling keeps getting picked ahead of him. Sterling's been bloody awful.
Sterling's been woeful. He's just been,
He's been terrible. He's still getting in ahead of Foden. He's been phenomenal. Just
right.
Pep's watching a different game.
And the last of our metrics slide then. So we've Carl, we've got your performance outliers slide. Could you just call out a couple of the headlines on this slide for us?
Yeah, sure. So for the people on the pod, it's there's 4 graphs here where it plots all the players by the position, whether defenders, goalkeepers, midfielders, strikers. The number of points they score per game, and on the y-axis and the cross-x-axis is their value of how much they cost. And you'd hope to sort of see it like a trend going upwards. Naturally, as you score more, you'd expect to score more points per game. We don't really observe this in the goalkeepers. It's pretty flattish, which means that the amount of money you spend, you aren't really getting that much value from it. So you got like Mendy and Martinez sort of like stand out. A very similar story can be seen for defenders. There's quite a group of them that you could choose from, like Chilwell, Rudiger, Zuma, Dawson, if they're playing, that is. The only real one that stands out in defence is John Stones. He does seem like much higher than
probably better
other
keep
players.
him then, shouldn't I, Carl?
Well, well, I would. He's been excellent. If I was had Man City defenders left, I would transfer them out and then bring them back in after the League Cup game. But that's a slightly going off topic. The strikers, much less. So we've like mentioned them all. The standout one I think really is Bamford, a little bit more than the others. But you've got the good strikers that we've mentioned before, as Kane, DCL, Callum Wilson when he's playing, and Watkins. And again, the midfielders, the same names as what we sort of seen before: Grealish, Gundogan, Barnes, Foden are the ones that sort of like are above the trend. But you can sort of see in the midfielders, you've got Salah, Bruno, and Son, of the expensive ones that are being much more above their trend as well. So they're probably some of the more value players that you could have in that are expensive.
Cool. Okay, and we have the optimum team. So I love this slide. So this shows the best team. So if you'd have picked this team at the start of the season in game week 1, this is the team that would have scored a hell of a lot of points and be near the top. Carl, do you want to run us through the most up-to-date optimum team?
Yeah, sure. So funny enough that when Luke was saying before about only having one up front, throughout the whole season, it's been having optimal teams always been having 3 up front, just because of the cheapness of the defenders. So not, as we've sort of like talked about, and it doesn't take a genius to guess who's in defence. It's Ederson in goal. Then you got 3 Man City defenders of Diaz, Cancelo, and Stones. And funnily enough, target of Aston Villa is the 4th defender.
Yeah.
Because of their cheapness, we've got a bit of cash to splash. So in midfield, we've got Bruno, Son, and Gundogan. And this allows us up front to have Kane, Calvert-Lewin, and Bamford. And that costs a grand total of 50 million exactly, and would score total points of 1,589, which is within 100 of the current leader, and no transfers used.
40 transfers to play with if you'd have picked that team. Not that you'd have picked that team at the start of the season, obviously, but I think it's always good. Again, structurally, I always like to look at the structure, that kind of 4-3-3, even though we've been probably expect, Diaz, Cancelo, Stones to get a massive hike next year. The art is obviously always kind of finding the value year on year in it, but very interesting stuff there, Carl. 1 second. Okay, so next we've just got a slide on ownership, and I've put two kind of, I've got one on the left, which was the last lot on January the 8th, I think you said, was it, Luke? And then we've got the current ownership, the ones on the right. And if you look at the one on the left, again, just touching on Man City, the only Man City player that had any kind of high ownership at that time was Kevin De Bruyne at 22%. All the names, those Kane, Son, Salah, Bruno, Calvert-Lewin, Zuma was obviously really high at that time. I'm not sure what's happened to, with Zuma. Just he and Rudiger just seems to have completely just swapped. Obviously, it happened at the same time as the manager change. Grealish had really high ownership then, as did Bamford, Vardy. Werner was 22% over that time. Robertson, Mane, James Ward-Prowse, Chilwell, and Justin. If you look now, there's been the ones at the top are still very, very similar. It's those kind of premium ones and the bargains, such as Bamford. So you've got Bruno and Kane are 40% plus. Salah's at 35, Son still at 30, Bamford at 30. But then Ruben Dias went from under 5%. He is now 28% owned. Phil Foden has gone to 25% owned. John Stones has gone to 24% owned. Gundogan 22% owned, Cancelo 22% owned, and Kevin De Bruyne is still there as well. It just shows, the absolute mass move onto Man City players. But hopefully, for those listening to our last podcast, you would have jumped on these players well before the vast majority of people. And if you did that, you would be, absolutely flying up the ranks. Yeah, any kind of interesting takeaways there for you, Luke, at all?
I think the fun one for me as an owner is KDB. He's coloured blue, so pretty much by the top four guys, top five, it's all Man City, isn't it? This one, but De Bruyne's dropped in ownership. And he's City's best player, and it's purely because he got that injury.
Yes,
so everybody's probably shipped him. And I think the positive thing for me, they've shipped him, gone to probably Gundogan or Foden is probably the likely move sideways, I would have thought. But they can't. People will have then spent that money, and so I've got KDB, who he's the best player in the league by a long shot. Was last year, still think he is. Him and Ederson are the only two that I think are nailed. Any important game, they will always be on the team sheet. I mean, you'd probably chuck Gundogan in that mix as well now, actually, and Diaz. But so I think he's probably the one that really stands out on that list for me. The only other one is probably Salah. So he's actually. I mean, I'm assuming he's got a lot of dead ownership.
Yeah, because
he was fairly high, and God, what was it? 1 goal in 10 games or something he scored. But if he starts going, Christ, because he's expensive, so he's hard. I mean, they'll put it this way. I don't know how you would get Salah easily with 2 transfers, because you're probably going to have to perform a bit of surgery. So you're probably going to have to use 2 to get him.
No, I personally, so I've left enough so I can do Sterling to Salah. But no, I take your point.
Using your noggin, mate.
But I take your point. He's 6.8 million. I think he's the third most expensive player in the game. There's only certain players like Kane. Not many have got Aubameyang and Vardy, who are the most expensive players, because obviously they haven't performed. There's only really Kane, who is a probable kind of like for like, and you're not going to want to move off Kane, because he's likely to score. So yeah, I think it's gonna be hard to get to. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the only other surprise is Fernandes at like less than 50% ownership in the game. I mean, what? Excuse me, swearing, but what the hell are people doing if you don't own Bruno? Like, seriously,
6.2 million. He's an absolute bargain. He's still an absolute bargain.
But but there we go. But yeah, so I think KDB of that list is probably the one who will go up. Son might drop a bit because of his injury. Yeah. So I guess that's a fairly easy move. You only got $5.5 million, but yeah, I'd be surprised if come the end of the season people haven't jumped on KDB unless you've got no transfers.
Fair enough. Al, anything to add there at all on the ownership side?
No, nothing to add. I must admit, I'm not a the biggest fan of Kevin De Bruyne in the Telegraph this season because of the second key assist that you mentioned going. Because of his price, I don't think he will score anywhere near Bruno. And considering his injury, he's been injured, Champions League. I'm sort of going to stay clear. And yeah, like Luke, I'm surprised more people haven't jumped onto Bruno. Though, even though he's on fire, he's not like, when you look at value for money, he's not that many points for his cost above Kane and a few others. So, it's reasonable that you could have a different mix, but I've had him all year. So, yeah. But except for that, no, I was surprised to see Salah up there. I imagine you'd have had a different picture of Man City a week or so ago being a bit higher.
Yeah.
Some people have started jumping off. But yeah.
Yeah, I think, I'm not a fan of De Bruyne anymore in this format either. So I just think when you've got Gundogan at 3.9, Diaz at 3.8, I think they'll match him, for half his price. But obviously that's personal preference. The one thing that stands out for me here, actually, I didn't really notice it earlier, but Salah's ownership, he's 36% owned. I agree with you, Luke. I think a lot of those are dead teams, right? But he still scored 170 points, right? So I think he's the third highest scorer in the game. Kane is only 13 points ahead of him. But Salah, as you said, has only got one goal in his last 8-9 games?
10 or 11 or something. It's ridiculous.
If he kicks off again, he can really fly. And I completely agree with you. I think that, one of my key sort of the takeaways from this is like mine. If you've got Salah, I would not be selling him personally because one is ownership, but two, as I say, is he's only 13 points off being the top scorer, and he has done nothing for a month and a half or 2 months now. So, and their fixtures, which we'll look at now, are really, really nice. So some interesting points in ownership then. So okay, so for the first half of the podcast, we've mainly focused kind of on understanding what has happened so far this season. The killer question obviously now is what we do moving forward. So looking forward now from now until the end of the season. So for our YouTube watchers, we have the Hubs fixture ticker, which shows all the teams' Premier League matches sorted by fixture ease for the remainder of the season. It is worth noting that the 4 teams were left in the FA Cup are Southampton, Chelsea, Leicester and Man City, and they're going to be played on the weekend of Saturday the 17th of April, which on this ticker will be just in before those game week 32 games. It is worth noting that as well. So in the short term, all these teams will have an extra fixture. But just briefly looking at the teams from now until the start, from now until the end of the season. So Arsenal's fixtures. So the next game is not very nice. They've got it depends how you think about Liverpool, right? The next game is not the best, but after that, their run for the whole season, apart from one game against Chelsea in game week 36, is absolutely stunning. So I'm sure we're going to mention a couple of Arsenal players in a bit. Liverpool's, as we mentioned, so they've got Arsenal next, but after that, their run, for the majority of the rest of the season again is absolutely superb, and they do have a little cluster there of Leeds and Newcastle back to back. Two of the worst defenses in the league. This is why we kind of mentioned, but a bit nervous when selling Salah. Wolves next 6 games, so the last 3 are not very nice, but the next 6, West Ham, Fulham, Sheffield United, Burnley, West Brom and Brighton are very, very nice. Southampton, so we mentioned around Bednarek, Carl. So Southampton's next 3 league games, Burnley, West Brom and Palace. I mean, they're really good defensive fixtures there. If you hold it on to Adams as well, I would say to hold on to Adams. And the teams with the worst fixtures, I mean, it's not the end of the world because you probably shouldn't be holding many of these, but Crystal Palace, I've got an absolute howler from now until the end of the season. Fulham, West Brom and Newcastle. Luke, what do you think? Quickly looking at the fixtures.
Yeah, I mean, I feel for the fans of Newcastle, West Brom, Fulham, and Palace. Looking at those run-ins, Christ,
Unbelievable.
it's who's going to be the least worst of that lot. I
It's
think is rather than who's going to. I can't see them doing well in many of their games. But as a side, a, an interesting one. I mean, sort of talked about it early on with Arsenal's fixture running because I've been looking at them for differentials in other formats as well. There's a really you've got two jump on points for Arsenal, but actually, if you wait after game week 30 and going for game week 31, so that's the kickoff on the 9th of April. City and so City, Liverpool, Chelsea all play on the 10th, but obviously City and Chelsea have that FA Cup game, so I probably wouldn't advocate going off them.
yeah.
But then Arsenal play Sheffield United last kickoff of the day. So you've got Spurs playing Man United. So you've got an easy hop from a United or Spurs player to one of the Arsenal boys, which could be a nice little move there. Interestingly, Saints also play on the Monday after. So if you were so inclined, you could probably jump on Southampton versus West Brom and get the cup game as well. So I think those are probably, bearing in mind everybody's got City, you've got a lot of options. I think if you wanted to jump on other teams for out, but you probably don't want to do that until the cup's been played.
No,
So yeah, I think that's probably my takeaway. The other one, as I called out at the start, was Liverpool. I just can't see them underperforming as badly as they've been underperforming. They're just too good. So Salah, Robbo, Trent, all of those boys. I mean, they're very expensive, but if you've got the odd transfer, they could get you flying. I think with those fixtures.
great stuff. Thank you, Luke. And Carl, any early observations looking at the fixtures?
I think they speak for themselves to a certain degree. Arsenal, except for the Liverpool match, they seem to have a really good run. Worth bearing in mind, though, with Arsenal, well, there's a few teams in the league. I'm never quite sure who's going to be starting and who's their first 11.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to become even more difficult because they're still with it in the Europa League. And they may sort of rotate a lot more. Liverpool, on the other hand, that they are a classy team, and they have struggled this year, and they're desperate for the points. So they can't, if there's comfortable in Manchester United's place, I would be a bit more cautious because of the Europe. But they can't afford to rotate as much, so they may have to, go hell for leather on both fronts. So I think it's safer going on the Liverpool player. I'm surprised that Wolves ticket are so high up on that ticker, and Southampton was a bit of a surprise for me, considering their last few games. But their last three games are probably the three after.
Yeah.
So that just confuses me a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So yeah, it must be the three games that are missing.
Yeah,
because we mentioned
they have got a rearranged game which hasn't been arranged yet, haven't they? I think it's against Man City. Is that right? I might be wrong there. It's Spurs. It might be Spurs actually.
Yeah.
Which has to slot in somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah, so it is what it is. So actually, keeping your Southampton, but yeah, I'll be looking. I was thinking about getting on the Salah and thinking everyone would have jumped off him, but if all you guys are jumping on him, it's like, oh, maybe not. I'm not 100% sure. And Chelsea have obviously got good fixtures. Interestingly, Man City have got difficult fixtures, and I know you've always got the same argument, but their class, they perform against anybody, which is true. But you pay a premium for that, and they have less games. So there's another argument about moving off if you're that way inclined.
Yeah. I look at their fixtures compared to Chelsea. So Man City's friends, they've got Leicester, Leeds, and Villa next. That's the next three, and they're not easy fixtures. Then they blank. They will have Chelsea in the FA Cup in there as well. then they've got Palace, then they've got Chelsea again. Away is going to be a tough one. They have a nice finish: Newcastle, Brighton, and Everton. Which you think they would do well. But like I say, I don't really doubt their class. For me, I doubt the minutes. This is what I doubt now. If they've got Dortmund in the Champions League, who I expect them to get past, and then that will go straight on then to another couple of Champions League fixtures. But even if they don't get past them, I still can't. They've got a fully fit squad. They've got one injury in their whole squad. They've got Laporte. They've got Kyle Walker. Nathan Ake is back now. I can just see them giving everyone. Mendy's there as well. I can just see everyone getting minutes, and this is the problem. And also, Pep doesn't tend to bring off defenders or centre backs at least, or bring any on. When if Stones is benched, He doesn't come on, so he's not even going to get a part clean sheet, for example. So this is why I'm a bit concerned about them. And I would say, if you have the transfers, I'd be tempted to stick with maybe one or two. I think Diaz is worth keeping because I think he plays most games. Cancelo, I think he's very explosive. He basically plays in midfield, right? So, he can get goals and assists as well. But I personally think Stones is dispensable. I'm sure we'll have a chat end of the season, Luke, and and you'll have Stones and De Bruyne will have smashed
2 million.
It. Yeah, but,
what do you want?
But for what? He's not going to play.
3.2 million.
But he's not going to play. I just don't think he's going to play. I honestly
don't.
Yeah,
but the point is, I can't jump from him to Robbo because Robbo's over 5 million.
You jump to Matt Target 2.6, who will play 10 games.
Well, yeah, but
do
I want to do that?
No,
they've got Liverpool and Man City in there of the next
Villa's,
three.
Villa's
so
are not
no
nice.
Thanks.
you could move on to Reece James, right? So Reece James, he doesn't start every game, I know, but he always comes on. So under Tuchel, he's either started or he's come on. So that's just just options.
Yeah. I think you're just worried because I've got. In fact, you can't sell him because you got no transfers. You just want me to flip and flog him. No, that's all it is.
I'm thinking of selling. I've only got 2 left, and Stones is on the chopping block. But we'll see. He may do right. You may fall on your feet with him, but I'm just not convinced that he. I think they're better options. We mentioned Villa, Liverpool. If you can get to Trent, for example, I think he'd be a wonderful replacement. Tierney, you mentioned earlier, a 3.2, for example. Anyway, we're going off. We're going off now. Stones and De Bruyne. I'm gonna have to match. We're gonna have to have some kind of bet. So you're gonna go Stones and De Bruyne. I'll pick another 2 random players, and we'll see where we go for the end.
Two random players. What, are you gonna have Bruno and Kane? Are you?
Kane, exactly. No, we'll go through. So I've got a long list of players, honestly, but just to say, in the medium term, Leicester, Chelsea, and Man United actually have all got really good fixtures in the medium term. So earlier, Carl, was it Carl or Luke? Sorry, it might have been Luke. Actually, talking about getting rid of Wan-Bissaka, but Man United's next 4, they've got Brighton. Okay, they then got Spurs, and then they've got Burnley and Leeds in the next 4. Those they're really nice fixtures. I just be leaving him for those, and then maybe looking at who gets knocked out of Chelsea and Man City in the FA Cup, and then maybe moving Wan-Bissaka at that point onto them, just for example. I think they've got really nice fixtures. Leicester, so they've got City next, then West Ham, but their next 4 after that, they've got West Brom, Palace, Southampton, Newcastle. That's a really, really nice run of fixtures.
And a cup game.
And a cup game against Southampton, who haven't been playing well. So that's a really nice little run of fixtures there. And Chelsea, we've mentioned already, so they've got West Brom, Palace, Brighton. They have got Man City in there, in the cup, and then they've got West Ham and Fulham. Their finish isn't very nice. This is my only concern with putting all my kind of eggs in the one basket on Chelsea. Is their final few games are going to be Man City, Arsenal, Leicester, and Villa, and potentially an FA Cup final as well. So they're not got the best finish, Chelsea, which is why I'm probably not going to go kind of all in on those, but.
I'll tell you what I'll do for you, Fergie, is on FA Cup day, Chelsea, Man City, I think are due to play first of the 2. So if they do, then I'll move Stones to Iheanacho.
Can't argue with that. If he's starting still, because Maddison and Barnes.
If he's starting.
Exactly.
But yeah. There you go.
And at the very,
if not, I'll move into Harvey Barnes. But yeah, get my games in then.
At the very end, there are 3 teams who've got really nice fixtures to finish. So Southampton finish with Fulham, Leeds, and West Ham, and they could also have an FA Cup final. Liverpool's last 3: West Brom, Burnley, and Palace. I mean, you know, you're gonna want Salah. I know we keep saying Salah. We'll have a look at a few options now, but I mean that run they've got, Liverpool's run, is absolutely beautiful. And Leeds also finished nice as well. They've got Burnley, Southampton, and West Brom. It's just probably worth putting that out. But I've made a bit of a list of players. The vast majority of them are very low owned as well. So these are the players, you know, looking at all those fixtures, who I think could provide really, really good value. I haven't got Smith Rowe in here. Carl, you mentioned him earlier. He looked a really decent option as well. But I think for Arsenal, so we've mentioned Tierney. He's only 8% owned at the moment. Saka, I know he's out at the moment, but he will be back soon. He looks so dangerous. What a footballer he is, and he is under 6% owned at the moment. 3.1 million, I want to say. I think he could be an absolute snip for the rest of the season. You know, if you're looking for cheap midfielder. For Liverpool, so Jota is back, and even though he hasn't done much so far, his ownership, he's under 4% owned, and he looks the kind of player for me who could really kick on and do well in these fixtures. So Jota, and he's very cheap. I want to say 4.1 million, because he was classified as a Wolves player, wasn't he, at the start of the season? So he's really, really cheap. And Alexander-Arnold, you know, who has always been an absolute darling in Telegraph, is 13% owned. I chucked in Neto for Wolves at 6%. He's 3.2 million. You know, he's really high up there in Carl's charts in terms of points per million. Really good player, really good fixtures. You know, I think Neto could be a shout in there. Southampton, I know we're not a massive fan, but in the short term, I even had Bednarek, Carl, on my list of plays. You know, he's only 5% owned still, but those next 4 or 5 fixtures are absolutely beautiful. I'd be keeping him definitely, you know, until after the FA Cup game, because then they have got of games, but I think he could provide really good value in the short term. And if you're looking for a cheap striker, Che Adams, 3.5 million for me, is one of the bargains of the season, and he is only 4% owned. Looking at Leicester, Harvey Barnes will be back soon, and you're right, Luke. You were really unlucky with him. He's 3.9 million, basically playing as a striker. Looked absolutely on fire. I nearly brought him in. I'm glad I didn't, obviously, because of what happened, but he may be back soon, and at the moment his ownership is 6%. You mentioned him earlier, Iheanacho. I mean, I've got a massive question mark next to him, so he's only 1.5% owned. Carl, what are your thoughts at the moment on maybe, you know, if you ignore your transfers remaining now, we're trying to think, you know, obviously for the people, you know, who have got, you know, a lot left as well. Do you think he's going to regain his place, you know, and keep starting for this run they've got?
So I didn't quite catch which player was that, sorry?
Iheanacho for Leicester up front.
Oh, keep his place.
Yeah.
So that's a tricky one. I think he'll keep his place in the short term.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you've got the transfers, you can bring him in, but you need to have a plan.
Agree.
To come out, and even though he's maybe cheap, the problem is then hard. You need to find someone else cheap to come out to if you're spending money elsewhere, because like you sort of mentioned, Barnes and Maddison's coming back, and as soon as, you know, how quickly will Brendan Rodgers sort of like move back to his first 11, I'd call it.
So he's 3.4 million, you know, and as you mentioned earlier, you know, we got Adams at 3.5, Neto at 3.2. You know, I do think there are plenty of bargain hop-off points. You know, if City get to the final, you could move back onto Foden or Gundogan, but that little run of fixtures that Leicester have got, so they will have Southampton in the FA Cup, they'll then have West Brom, Crystal Palace, Southampton and Newcastle. Those 5 fixtures there, I think he is worth a pay. If I had the transfers left, I would go for it, and you know, and just, you know, and kind of see how it goes. Then okay, they finish up with United, Chelsea, and Spurs. Right, they're not very nice. But that little run in the middle there, those 5 games look prime to me. Luke, what do you think about Iheanacho? Oh, you're on mute, mate. Sorry, I think.
Sorry, I'm on mute,
Sorry.
idiot. Yeah, no, I was just checking on FPL for form. And yeah, he's certainly from the strikers, he's by far and away the form player in the game. So yeah, no, I'll just check. So in all positions, he is the inform player in FPL, but I think that will transfer straight over. So yeah, I'm with you, but does an informed player lose his place if he's scored what, a brace, a hat trick, a couple of other goals?
Fire, yeah.
I mean, how can you drop someone who's doing that?
Yeah.
So I'm with you short term. I won't be bringing him in for the Man City game because maybe they'll score, but it's not going to be loads. So watch him bang in 4 or something now. But John Stones will play and I'll get minus points, won't I?
So Leicester do play the week after on the Sunday afternoon as well. So there'll be plenty of teams that play before him, so you can actually jump on that one.
Yeah. I think there's some good options to. Yeah, I'm with 8 left and him being at such an easy entry point. I mean, Wan-Bissaka, I've got Stones could go there if somebody else gets.
It is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd probably eye that up after the FA Cup one, really, but because I know I don't really want to be selling them. I mean, it'd probably be Wan-Bissaka. I know you're saying don't, but. I mean, they've got Spurs, haven't they? So, but I don't know.
And then Burnley and Leeds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost feeling I've got enough transfers, but do I start entering self-sabotage because I've got a nice team? Do I just leave it and just go for that FA Cup final game and just do 5 transfers for that week or something? But I won't. I'll burn them. I'll do stupid things. So. But yeah, Iheanacho, someone short term. I'm all over that. I've just got to find the right move.
Then moving on to Chelsea players. So Mendy is 10% owned. He's quite cheap, 3.5 million. If you consider that Edison is 4.4. I think that's really good value with their fixtures as well. Azpilicueta surprised me, 4% ownership, Aspi, and he is nailed on as you can get. And
expensive.
He is expensive. He's 4.5 million, but I do think he is. He's got attacking threat, which he's proved historically, and even this season, nailed. And even when he's benched, he comes on. He's like their he's their number one. So I do think he's good value. And then you've got Reece James, who is higher, but he's so cheap. He's 3 million, Reece James. He's 9% owned, but as I say, he either starts or he comes on. This is where Tuchel and Pep differ, because Pep doesn't tend to use defensive substitutes, whereas Tuchel does. So you'll always get that part clean sheet, as we saw with Azpilicueta on the weekend. Rudiger, who is 3.8 million, is only 2% owned. If you consider Zuma's 9% owned, Rudiger looks to be their number one centre back at the moment. Kind of Aspie aside, he looks a really good option. Christensen is really cheap. He's 2.6 million, but I do think when when Silva returns,
stop this man talking.
No, I'm just saying that I think he's the fall guy when Thiago Silva returns. So I wouldn't go with him, and I also personally wouldn't go with Chilwell or Alonso because they're rotating basically every other game. So for me, looking at Chelsea defence, Mendy, Aspie, Reece James, and Rudiger are the people I would look at. Chelsea midfield. Now, there's a player who I really like. Now, he hasn't done anything yet, but this is a player who could do some serious damage over the coming weeks. Kai Havertz. He is 4% owned. He has recently been moved to the number 9 role. He's their starting number 9 now for Chelsea. He's 4.8 million. I watched the game. They played Leeds a week or so ago, and it was 0-0. But how he didn't, I think it was Leeds. How he didn't score, I don't know. He had like four shots in the box. He was just all over everything. He just didn't finish. But 4.8 million midfielder, I think Havertz is the kind of player who could finish the season very, very strongly. And I think, I would highly recommend him as differential. Mount is 12% owned. bit more. What a fantastic player. Looks to be on penalties as well. Maybe apart from when Jorginho's on the pitch, but he's ahead of Werner now. Werner is still 19% owned. Rashford, so just moving on to Man United. Rashford, who was Carl's pick a while ago, 13%. Shaw, only 3% owned, which really surprised me. He's 4 million or 4.1 million or 4 million. Just looks, attacking wise, defensive wise, what a season. And Wan-Bissaka, who was on my list as well, you're taking him out again, 9% owned. So they're the kind of, of all the teams you mentioned, they've got good fixtures in the short or medium term. That's my list of players who I would be looking at there. Are there any obvious ones that I've missed? Have either you got any names that just kind of spring out to you that I've missed, or any you disagree with at all?
Probably no. I'm fairly comfortable with. You mentioned half the teams, I think, in that list, Fergie.
I mentioned.
I tell you what, actually,
we've got good fixtures. So
actually, did you mention Mane in there?
I didn't mention Mane.
Right. So he's had for him a bad season, definitely. But he's so good.
Yeah.
Hard to argue. Yeah. He could. I mean, if Jota, if they go back to how they were when Jota first broke into the team, because they played all four of them with Firmino as well, and if Mane, that's when Mane sort of started catching up Salah in points. Yeah. But I don't know. Jota's such good value, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know why you would really go past them if they go back to how they were. Jota's the one really for the price, but I don't know. Mane could be a bit of a left field shout.
Yeah, he's 11% owned, so he's not that highly owned. Only scored 118 points this season, but I think with Liverpool, they all seem to do well, or none of them do well, don't they? So if we're saying that we think Salah and Jota are going to do well, then Mane will very likely do well as well. And if you really want an end of season sort of a real gamble, sort of, if you're behind in your mini leagues or whatever, you really want a real punt at the end of the season, you could do worse than just slamming in a Salah, Mane and Jota, just bang in midfield, and just hope they beat some teams 3 or 4-0, which we all know they're capable of doing.
Well, just ask Andy off your FPL pod, didn't he? Because he captained Mane on that last day of the season and went 8th to 3rd in the world, didn't he?
Right.
So
he did that exact thing.
Mane right. loves a end of season running. So I don't know. Might do it, mate. Might go John Stones to Mane.
Oh yeah. Carl, anything to kind of add there? Anything you agree with or disagree with at all?
No, like you said, you sort of mentioned virtually every player in the.
I didn't mention every bloody player. I mentioned 20 players.
20. How many choices are there? The ones I think have been missed and that they could go on a good run is one that Luke brought in the other day, which is Lingard, who's been on fire for his price.
Can't argue with that.
And he looks really good. Whether it will last, time will tell. And the Leeds boys, Antonio as well, and you got Susek, West Ham, who scores points, and the Leeds boys could go far in Bamford and Ravino.
Yeah.
And they're not the ones that automatically come to your mind because they're not, at the big 4 or the big 6. So, all worth a punt. Looking at the fixtures as well, like Leeds have got some tricky fixtures in the short term.
Yeah.
But if you've got transfers left, 3 weeks to go, jump in.
Agree with that. Yeah, I can't argue. And didn't Souček score a hat-trick last night for the Czech Republic? I think he did. Yeah. So no, he's definitely and he was top of Carl's points per million per game for a while, wasn't he? I think so. You can't argue with any of those. The only reason I didn't really look at them is as you say, Carl, their fixtures in the short term are maybe not the best. So West Ham have got Wolves, Leicester, Newcastle, Chelsea, and Leeds. Well, they've got Sheffield United next, obviously a really good fixture. But after that, they've got City, Liverpool, United, Brighton, and Spurs. But as you say, they fixed at the end a really, really nice lead. So yeah, I would, I'd recommend to, everyone here who's looking to spend a few fixtures, look at this ticker, you can pretty much kind of, chop out, if you look at Leicester's and and Wolves fixtures and stuff in the short term, you could then move them on at the end to teams like, Southampton, maybe Leeds, maybe Liverpool and stuff. But yeah, no, I can't argue with any of those guys.
Just one shout out for owning Rafinha. I always get a mini heart attack every time I check the Leeds team sheet because he always comes up as Diaz on the team sheet.
Okay,
and every time I'm like, oh no, and then I'm like, oh no, that's who he is. So it's a bit of fun if you want that mini heart attack for not paying attention every week. It's
yeah. And we've just got I've flashed this graphic up a couple of times already, but it's from the Fantasy Football Hub fixture planner, which shows the matches day by day until the FA Cup 4th round, and all this is available to all Fantasy Football Hub members. If you this is just a real short snapshot, but if you go into the hub, type in TFF planner, it's a really, really extensive transfer planner for you. But things which jump off me, we've mentioned Man City. You can't really tell a lot from this because it's only got 2 games in advance. You can't really see the 3-for-1s and 4-for-1s. I would just say that check up on the Champions League progress, because that may impact team selections for teams like maybe Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal in the Europa as well. So Arsenal probably haven't got much of a hope of going for Europe via the league, so they may play stronger teams in the Europa and things. Like I say, there's not a lot we can draw from this at the moment, apart from what you mentioned earlier, Luke, where as a couple of teams play after. So I think you called out. Who did you call out earlier? Was it Arsenal played, don't they?
Arsenal and Southampton.
Arsenal and Southampton play after a lot of teams on the second weekend. But yeah, there's not too much we can actually draw out from that, sadly, because we haven't got the fixtures for the second half.
There's one. I guess there's one that sort of stands out there, which is the Wolves game, because they've got, from memory, they've got decent fixtures. But if you're flush with transfers, and I know there'll be a few people, but you could get a 2-for-0 on jumping on a Wolves player. You get to see the team sheets for both those games, and then jump back on. But I mean, I wouldn't be going anywhere if you've got sub 10. Don't do that. But if you're sort of north of 15 transfers, you need to use them now. That's you're not going to get much better than that.
Fair enough. Anything there, Carl, to draw out at all in terms of the way the fishes have landed in early April?
No, nothing in addition. What just sort of popped into my mind is, and we haven't mentioned him, but because we mentioned Wolves, is it Johnny?
Yeah,
Otto, who's been a old favourite in Fantasyland over the previous years, but he's been injured and he's just sort of come back, and you never know what sort of form he may be in. So it's worth probably keeping an eye on with those fixtures. You never know.
Good shout there. He was on fire last year, wasn't he? He was really, really good. I've lost a couple of slides, but we'll carry on regardless. So just finally, Carl, you've got your algorithm forecast for for the rest of the season, because it says the next 10 weeks. I'm assuming this is for the rest of the season. Have you got it? I'm in front of you now.
Yeah, sure.
Are you able to go through it?
Yeah, I'll quickly go for it. But before I do, I've just noticed a mistake in it, in the sense that it's selected a 5-3-2 formation, which is a little bit illegal.
It is this season, isn't it?
Yeah. But anyway, if we could, most of the names have been mentioned before, but it's a 5-3-2, as I mentioned. In goal, we've got Mendy. The 5 defenders are Luke Shaw, Reece James, Ambasaka, John Stones, and Christian of Chelsea. 3 midfielders would be Salah, Bruno, and Antonio, and up front you'd have Kane and DCL.
So only one Man City player, which is interesting.
Yeah, and it's John Stones, who probably won't play most of them.
Yeah, so there's 3 United players, 3 3 Chelsea players as well. That's interesting. So your algorithm seems to favour Chelsea and United at the back, don't they? Because out of the 6, 5 of them are either United or Chelsea, which is interesting. Yeah.
And you notice as well that they're the fullbacks mainly, except for Christiansen, who's probably because of his cheapness.
Yeah.
And I'm probably thinking about it. I should have excluded him because I'd imagine that he won't be there for the season once Silva's back.
And interesting.
There's an easy move there. You could easily drop Antonio down to Lingard, and then Christensen can become 4.4. So it's probably you get Lingard and Aspi or something like that for those two, couldn't you? So,
and in terms of projected points the rest of the season, Salah and Kane are projected to have 51 points, so they're the highest projected point scorers for the rest of the season. This obviously doesn't include FA Cup, which is obviously worth pointing out, because obviously Chelsea and City kind of may have those extra games. Calvert-Lewin is quite high on 57 there, Carl. We haven't really mentioned him much. I know he got really good value, but 57 points the rest of the season. Did that surprise you at all?
Be honest, he surprised me all year long. He's got so if you talk about 10 games left, he's got 9 left and he's played 29, maybe 30. He scored 156 points. So it's pretty much in line with what his performance has been. And just looking at your fixture ticker difficulty, I would sort of say it seems reasonable. It may be a bit on the high side because personally, I think Everton seem to have dropped away a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Which may not have been picked up, but based on those projections, it seems, he's not cheap. He's not cheap.
It's a slightly left field shout, but I'd right now I'd probably rather have Richarlison than DCL. 0.1 cheaper and midfielder, so it gets that extra point for the goal. Because he's on recent times he's been the form player. DCL's picking up again, but yeah, I think he's on pens as well, and DCL isn't. So that could be a little bit of left field shout, but yeah, you can see why it's picking that team though. I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think my only challenge is the City boys with the extra game, probably 2 in my opinion.
Fair enough. Okay, let's move on. We've had through quite a few questions, as you'd expect, for not podding for a couple of months. We had some questions from Twitter, and we had some from our Fantasy Football Hub TFF WhatsApp group, and also a couple on email as well. Hopefully, we've answered quite a few of these actually, but let's just have a quick look through it. So, questions off Mark Cram. All the top teams are all loaded with Man City. Go similar or pick differentials. Luke, can I ask you what you think about that?
Depends what your tactic is. If you're consolidating and trying to keep where you are, you hold them. If you're trying to chase, you probably go differentials, I think would be my view on it. I mean, the other thing is decide after that Chelsea City game.
I think
there's 6 games after that. That's you can make a lot of ground in 6 games. So City go out, bin them. If they stay in, hold them.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. Carl, have you got anything to add to that?
No, very similar view. So I wouldn't be, even if I was looking to hold my position, I still wouldn't be 7 or 8 City players. I would reduce my holding. But if you want to hold your position, you still want a fair contingent of them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Mark's second question, which I think we just answered really. So, strategy for players or teams still in the FA Cup: transfer in before the semis and hope to pick teams that go through, or wait for final lineup. So in terms of Chelsea and City, I would probably just to kind of wait and hold on. But I would say that if you were planning on bringing in any Leicester players, I would bring them in before that game because even if they don't go through, Leicester, they've still got an amazing run. West Brom, Palace and Newcastle all at home in 3 of the next 4 after that game. if you're looking at Iheanacho, like Vardy, whoever, I would go for it anyway. Kind of regard, because even if they're knocked out, you still get those 4 games after that. So I think in terms of City, I agree with Carl in terms. I think I'd look to reduce my holding to maybe 3 or 4, 5 players. Obviously, depending how many transfers you've got left, right? But all the players you just mentioned, so players like Salah, maybe Iheanacho, maybe Vardy, maybe someone like Neto, maybe Saka. I like Havertz. Chelsea defenders, these are kind of players I would probably be looking to get in. It's all timing in Telegraph, right? Because practically every game now is played at a different time. It's all about the timing, and wait until one of the fixtures has gone for City, and then just move on at the right point on those teams. But yeah, hopefully that answers your questions there, Mark. Tim Barry asks, is 5-4-1 formation still the way to go? So we're all currently sat on a 5-4-1. Carl, what do you think moving forward? Do you think 5-4-1 is still the formation to go for?
No, I don't. And I don't think it's ever been. If you look at the optimal teams, I don't think it's ever been the way really through the season. I think that there was the time because of the number of Man City fixtures, and you wanted to jump on City, and they were the most likely players. And I think if you want the high variance play, which I may tend to go for, where you want a full block of defenders, and therefore if they keep a clean sheet, you get 5. But if otherwise, I wouldn't go 5-4-1. I think 4-3-3 or 3-4-3 are probably the best is the best formation. But if you're chasing and you want to take high risk, high variance, then I may go 5-4-1.
Luke, what do you think?
I'm going to disagree slightly and say hell yeah. This is top 6 clean sheet City, so it's not budget 5, it's premium 5. So yeah, I won't be going under 4 defenders for the rest of the season. It'll be 5 or 4 from here on in.
I've got to say I agree. So yeah, I think I'm on 5-4-1 now, and I can't see me change. But I may.
You've got no transfers. You can't. You literally can't.
I know. Okay, but even if I did have transfers, I can't see me going to anything less like a 4-5-2 or 4-5-1. I think 5-4-1. There's such value in the Chelsea defense, City defense, Man United defense. Really good value, really good fixtures. I put. And as you mentioned earlier, Luke, in this final quarter of the season, you tend to see a lot more clean sheets as well. So I would personally be sticking with it. But as you say, each to their own. Who's got the kit? People have already covered my main questions, but my concern is that Chelsea v City happens twice and may cancel each other out defence-wise. Having all City defenders at the moment, and this puts me off. So yeah, I think we've kind of said I just leave it. Maybe bring in 1 or 2. I brought in Aspilicueta and Mendy to go with my 4 City defenders. As we continue to say, I haven't got many transfers left, so I haven't got. I'm not very flexible, but I think I would have done that regardless. And it gives you that pivot. Then if Chelsea go out, they've still got some nice fixtures after that, and then you can move back off them if you wanted to. If Chelsea go through, you're kind of stuck with them. Then you can move off a couple of City defenders. But I would personally look to move on to a Chelsea defender or 2. If you haven't already, do it very, very soon, and you can then pivot away after that FA Cup game. That's what I do personally. Any different there, chaps? I think it's kind of what we've mentioned, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree.
Good. Okay. Question from Mike Thomas. So 6 changes left. He's got 6 transfers left. 3 City defenders in Stones, Cancelo, Diaz, plus KDB and Gundogan. Do I look to maybe move at least 1 defender to a Chelsea one? So everyone's kind of asking the same sort of questions. If so, who? Also got Salah, who's taken up a lot of cash but plays every week. Hard to think he won't come good. So I think we've just answered this exact question, actually, thinking about it. I would personally move on to someone like Aspi, Reece James, maybe Rudiger, maybe Mendy, and then wait till that FA Cup semi is over, and then kind of go from there. I would keep Salah. Any argument against keeping Salah?
If I had him, no. I'm looking to bring him in. So,
cool.
Sorry, Carl.
I think.
No, I was just sort of saying you know, exactly the same as you.
Ewan McConnell asks thoughts on Iheanacho. So I think we've gone through our thoughts. I think if you've got the fixtures, he could be a really nice pickup for that period of 5 games there, including the FA Cup. Is it worth holding on to Villa players? They have additional games. Their fixtures look tricky. So firstly, that one. So Villa players. Carl, what are your thoughts on Villa players?
Well, I'm less keen on Villa players now than if you'd asked me probably a month ago. Probably for several reasons. We've always thought they've had more fixtures, and they've only got 1 extra fixture now. Same as Everton, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
So they've both played 28. And they've got quite a tricky run-in, if I remember rightly, when I looked at the Villa ones, and therefore I wouldn't be looking to go in that direction, even with the extra game. So, yeah, I'd stay off.
Luke, anything from you on that, Villa?
No, I think I'm with Carl on that one. I mean, I think Villa outperformed, and I think they are a very, very different team without Grealish. So, I mean, it's like every week he's due back and he's not. I think if Grealish was there and they were still firing, I'd potentially be interested because of the extra games. But without Grealish, it's probably a swerve, but watch.
I think I would say, depending on transfers, you know, if you're lowish on transfers and you have Matt Target, I would keep for sure. I would just hold in because, you know, at 2.6 million, you know, even if you get 3 or 4 clean sheets out of the last 10 games, it's still good value there. But I probably wouldn't look to be bringing anyone in. And, you know, if you've got maybe players like Watkins and stuff, you know, after Fulham this weekend, they've got Liverpool and, you know, and City, then we've got Everton and Man United soon after. You know, I think it's better options, you know, a lot of the ones we've mentioned. But hopefully that answers your question. Question off FPL Notebook. Can we have a mention of the Chelsea team sheet incident? Yes, we went through that earlier, where they sent out the wrong team sheet and everyone made transfers and then they changed the team 20 minutes later, which is an absolute nightmare. I was in B&Q and I must have looked so strange because I set alarms for the lineups, as you know, as every, or you know, a lot of hardcore managers do. Exactly. So I'm in B&Q looking for White Spirit, and I'm in there. The alarm goes off, so I have a look. Right, okay, cool. So I make the transfers, and then I carry on. And for some reason, I very rarely do this. But for some reason, I looked back on my phone just to see this new, and I was like, hell, what's going on here? And yeah, they completely changed the team. Eight players. So I was stood in B&Q for about 10 minutes.
Drinking the White Spirit.
Drinking the White Spirit. But I was just looking at my phone in the aisle, just completely stunned. I must have looked so strange to everyone walking by because I made changes in, you know, Telegraph, in Dream Team. You know, it's not just Telegraph. I made changes in other games as well. And it was just like, so I had to think about, you know, you can reverse them in Dream Team. So I reversed them. And, you know, and things like that. And in my other Telegraph teams, like, well, I wasn't going to do it now. But do I do it now? It's just like one absolute nightmare. Anyway, and, you know, he asks again, is it time to reduce the blanket Man City coverage in terms of favourite teams with more fixtures? Hopefully we've answered that now. And best of the Chelsea defender. So if you could each pick one Chelsea defender or keeper, who would be your one pick to bring in? Maybe this weekend at home to West Brom. Aspie. Carl, who do you think?
As to be a defender, oh my dear.
Well, a defender or the keeper.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be the keeper because then, funny enough, when you start talking about the FA Cup, and I saw the team sheet, I thought, bloody hell, he's put it, not only strong, he's put Mendy in goal.
Yeah, and he changed.
And I thought, oh, that's really odd, but it still didn't make any difference. I may go for Reece James.
Yeah.
I would go for Chilwell. Or Reece James, but I think just because of the rotation aspect, I'd go for James, especially for the price.
Fair enough. I think I've gone for Aspilicueta just because I think he's the most nailed. But I do think Reece James at 3 million is a really, really good option as well. I think I think Rudiger is decent. I'd probably go Aspie, you know, if I had limited funds, but Reece James, you know, if you're kind of tight, because he's 1.5 million less. We just had a couple of questions. So we had some questions off Simon Baldock on email. From here till season end, what is your overall transfer strategy? Obviously, this links into precisely how many you have left, but I am thinking here of overall strategy. There are 9 games left. My main team has 8 transfers left. So, Luke, you've got 8 left. You've got similar to Simon. What are your, what's your strategy for the rest of the season?
2 luxury, 4 based on the FA Cup results, and then 2 in reserve for injury. Hopefully I get to use luxury ones on them, but yeah, so I'll be using 4 for looking for 3 for 1s and 4 for 1s when the fixtures finally come out, and FA Cup results are known. Yeah, and 2 luxury ones. I don't know how I'll use them yet.
I can't really argue with that. Carl, obviously you've only got the 4 left at the moment, but have you got like a general strategy for the rest of the season?
I'm just going to splash them. In about 2 weeks' time, they're just going to go. I don't. If I get injuries, so be it. But I'm thinking, I haven't quite decided. I've got options of going for a Leicester backline or a Chelsea backline, and probably bring Salah in. So I may sort of think about, some money at the front and whatever I can have. A blanket defence as much as possible, or 2 teams at the most, and just got the gamble away to catch up ground.
Yeah, I think I've only got the 2 left, right? So I can't really afford to be expansive. But I think if I had I don't know 8, 9, 10 sort of left, I think what I'd be doing, you've got your core maybe 8 or 9 players in your team that you would just leave, right? So a couple of City defenders, maybe a Chelsea defender or 2. Bruno, Kane, maybe Salah. You've got that core there. But what I think, I think what I would do. So, a few of the options which we've mentioned, right? I think you can afford to take a couple of gambles, and I don't mean use them as 3 for 1s or 4 for 1s. I would daisy chain off one onto the other. So maybe you can go for someone to a Iheanacho and then move a Iheanacho off for Jota, for example. Or something. Along those lines, or maybe you can go for Saka, and when his fixtures dry up, go for Jota or something along those lines. But I think I would keep your core 8 or 9, and then just use your transfers for those other 1 or 2s. But I would also say, if you can, I would very much try and stick to having a transfer left per week for the rest of the season, so you can continually optimize your team, but also, if you have any emergencies, which are bound to happen as the season kind of edges out, and and this is where my really bad start has just wiped out any chance of me having a really good finish, because I had to use. Remember, I came on the podcast and I had a complete meltdown in the first international break because I'd made 5 transfers in one day because my team was just an absolute bloody mess, and I brought in Raul Jimenez, and he scored an own goal, and I was just like. Oh, it was the worst ever. But this is where it's coming back to bite me now. I think since then I've played reasonably well, but I should have 7 or 8 left. I would be able to do the same thing, but I think strategy wise, I think that's probably the right to do. And I'm just gonna have a quick look in that group of just quickly. Most of the questions are all around are all around the kind of Man City and Chelsea. I think we had one of our newer members, news around transfer strategy for the rest of the season, which we have answered as well. So yeah, I think actually we've mentioned answered the vast majority of the questions there. If anyone does have any more questions after the pod, please feel free to pop it on the podcast link, and we will back to you and answer any more there.
I think there was one in the WhatsApp about where it's sort of loosely related to Wolves defenders, but I think we touched on that you've got that option for 2 for 1. For me, it probably, if I can't remember if Bolly's fit, but if Bolly's fit, he's their goal scoring defender. He'd probably be the defender that I would go for as a Wolves defender, but only if you've got more than 10 transfers.
Yeah, I personally, I don't think Wolves personally are that great an option. Yeah. I mentioned Neto, and Carl obviously mentioned Johnny as well, but maybe maybe a punt, but they're not. They haven't been very good this season, have they? Let's say so. Okay, so Carl, I've just got your team very, very briefly on screen. As you said, you're gonna have a bit of a splurge. Is that right? So with your last few transfers, anything specific or?
No, nothing specific at the moment. Like I said, I've got a couple of weeks because Leicester look a bit attractive, and therefore I may get a couple of their defenders.
Yeah.
And then it's just about what I can shift. Betinek will have to go after their good run. So, yeah, I'll have just 2 teams in defence will be my plan, and just fingers crossed, because I'm in gamble mode. There's no point me playing to get the most points I can, because I'll never catch the people I want to catch up. So, you know, the points you made and Luke are the way to go in sensible play. But when you're lagging, you have to take your chance, and that'll be it.
Cool. And Luke, we briefly got your team back up on screen. Have you got any, precise moves you're thinking about now after all that?
Not really. I'm happy with the team. Like I talked about, Iheanacho, I can't work out how I can get him in easily with the way the fixtures lie, but that might be a move. There's the jump off Stones move potentially is a move. I don't really like it. I mean, Wan-Bissaka is. I look at my team and Lingard was a gamble, and I guess I could hop off Lingard if he drops off, but yeah, Wan-Bissaka and Lingard are probably my 2 budget ones that I might move on. The other options is to get Salah in. So if Salah starts scoring, he's one I'm very scared of. And yeah, good advice I got a long time ago. If you're scared of a player, buy him.
Absolutely. If I were you, I'd go Stones with Iheanacho in a couple of weeks, make it a 4-4-2. That's my advice. Here's the bet. We will go Stones and De Bruyne, and I will go Iheanacho and.
I'm not taking that.
You're not taking that. Oh, well, there you go.
No. You pick another defender at 3.2. I'll take that. I'm not. You're not having the most informed player in the game.
Fair enough.
No chance.
Okay. And just finally, looking at my team. So I've got 2 transfers left in this one. I have got 5 left in a similar team in another team, but I've got 1.4 million in the bank, so I'm definitely going to be doing Sterling to Salah. Which will leave me 1 transfer for emergencies. But if you look at my team, so I'll have Mendy, Azpilicueta, Zinchenko, Stones, Cancelo, and Diaz. So a really strong back five. I don't really want Stones, but anyway, that's by the way. I'll then have Foden, Gundogan, Salah, Bruno, and Kane with roughly 1 million left in the bank to upgrade somewhere along the line. But yeah, I'm just hoping. I'm ranked 175th. I mean, if I can finish in the top 300 or 400, I would be over the moon, considering how I started. As I say, we had an absolute night. I think in October, in the first international break, I think it was actually like 110k. I think it got down to like 70k in like the second international break. It was just absolute nightmare start. I was like hundreds of points behind in my mini leagues, and on top of a few now. But let's just see, obviously, how it finishes up there. Finally, let's just have a quick look at the top of the Hubs TFF £200 members league. So in 10th place, a really good looking chap, Andrew Ferguson, is in 10th place in this league, clinging on by his fingernails at the moment. 9th and 8th, Roger Morgan is dominating in here along with someone else. The Knight Alan Burberry is sat in 7th place. Jack Palmer sits in 6th and 5th. In 4th place, Fauzi Salabucks. 3rd place, Roger Morgan is there again. 2nd place, Jack Palmer is there again. And top, Fauzi Salabucks is there again. Look at these overall ranks. They're absolutely ridiculous. So I'm 10th in 174th place. Chap in top, Fauzi's in 27th. Jack Palmer's in 28th place overall. Roger Morgan is in 46th. And then we've got 80th, 87th, 105th. absolutely crazy ranks. Really, really well played. So everyone, well, all 4 people on that list, because we allowed multiple entries, but really well played, everyone. And there will be cash prize. I think it's for the top 3 potentially in there, but yeah. Many thanks as usual, Luke and Carl, and to all our loyal watchers and listeners for their great questions and comments. We really, really do appreciate it. Luke, where can people get hold of you?
The easiest place on Twitter is FPL_equation, but I'm in quite a few of the Facebook forums and write the odd article on the hub as well. So, but Twitter if you want me.
Superb. Carl, thank you so much for all your data and all your advice and everything else. Where can people get hold of you?
The best place would probably be on Twitter as well, Darkest Jungle.
Magic. Thank you, Carl. And my Twitter handle is @Fergie222. So this video recording will be on the Fantasy Football Hub Sky and TFF YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. And remember to subscribe to the channel at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast. So, if you enjoy listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please leave 5 stars and a comment. It would be very much appreciated. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are @FFH_HQ. So please follow and feel free to ask us any questions. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you'll find everything you need for fantasy football, all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, Opta stats, top player team reveals, and much more. Sky planning maestro Ian Parrin has built a TFF transfer plan, as I mentioned earlier, for Hub members. And for premium members, we have our dedicated TFF WhatsApp group. All the links are in the description below to sign up. We have also partnered up with ffstuff.co.uk, which alongside the Hub has the best Telegraph fantasy resources you can imagine. So take a look at ffstuff.co.uk, which also have brilliant resources for Sky Fantasy, FPL, Dream Team and Fan Team. You can also take a look every week at telegraph.co.uk/fantasy sports, where I give transfer tips each week, and I also reveal my TFF team and plans each week for Fantasy Football Hub members on the website. Fantasy Football Hub has you completely covered for everything TFF and fantasy football. We will see if we can squeeze another one in before the end of the season, if it's needed. If we can, we obviously will. If we feel it's needed. If not, we will definitely be back in the summer as soon as the game launches to have a look. But we'll see how we can do until the end of the season. From all of us here at Fantasy Football Hub, stay safe, good night, and goodbye.